on the bottom right here, you can see that conversation in the top in that screenshot looks in the bottom inside the actual editor. It's represented this kind of like hierarchy of nodes feeding into each other and options feeding into more options. So sex in these games is usually kind of treated as just another node within this kind of branching dialogue tree. And then usually you're rewarded with some kind of cutscene where you get to see people like these Fox News getting really upset about this sex box scandal. And this kind of treats sex as kind of this endpoint. Sex is kind of this reward, this destination at the end. Sex is kind of this pathfinding problem where we're trying to navigate this space from point A to point B. And point A is, I hardly know you, and point B is, let's have sex. And over there's a capture from Team America, right before they have the sex scene with two dolls flopping on each other. And Team America is kind of a critique of these games as well. And it's kind of gross to think of sex like this, because that kind of feeds into thinking of sex as this kind of puzzle or this route you need to optimize for. Feeds into what's called pickup artist culture, if any of you are familiar with that, where you just have to do the right strategy and then a woman will sleep with you, something like that. Alternatives for representing sex and thinking about sex in games and interaction. Here's a really good game by Jimmy Andrews and Lauren Schmidt called Realistic Kissing Simulator. If you haven't played it, you totally should. And this game has a really great first part where before you have two faces kissing, one person has to say, "Would you like to kiss me?" And the other person can say yes or no. And if you say no, the game says, "Okay, thanks for playing," and then it's over. So it's kind of like saying no is okay. And it's kind of representing sex as this process. Before I kiss you, we have to do this other thing first. Another game that's really dealing with sex is a card game called Consenticle by Naomi Clark. And in this game, sex isn't just a card you throw down that says sex. Sex is kind of the context, the atmosphere for all of this play and interaction going on. So sex is actually made of all these different cards and verbs, right? Release, kiss, penetrate, wink, touch. And it has to do with how coordinated you are with your partner. So what if sex in games was more like something you do instead of something you get? I would say that's my critique of a lot of video games with sex in them. Most of them don't have sex as this process or interaction. It's kind of just this thing that happens. What if we thought of sex more as like a process, as more of a matter of like sportsmanship, perhaps? What if we think of really good sex as like a well-played game, something like that? So that leads into technology and consent. Consent is really key to multiplayer games. If you're familiar with the idea of the magic circle, it's the idea that every game has this kind of magical atmosphere where by virtue of this social contract that players agree that they're all playing this game, punching you is okay because we're going to punch you inside this game and that's acceptable. Here's another game called Button, which stands for Brutally Unfair Tactics Totally Okay Now. And in this game, it's about kind of having the players define what's totally okay now. Is it okay to like tackle each other and fumble over the controller and stuff? What is okay in the context of this game? But if we're talking more like single player games, I would argue computers can't meaningfully negotiate with human users. You can always just turn off a computer. You can always just delete a program or delete an app or whatever. A computer can't really negotiate with you meaningfully because there's this existing power dynamic that can never be changed. And technology that fights to survive, we might classify as malware. Here's a screen capture from Blade Runner of a replicant. It's a very common sci-fi trope where technology runs amok because it's fighting to survive and not obeying its human users. The other way that consent might take place in technology is the EULA, the end user licensing, a giant wall of text we all read before we can use a program or something, right? But Except none of us reads this, right? We just click I agree and whatever. This is kind of a false, legalistic, coerced consent. It's not consent designed to protect us and Google. It's a consent designed to just protect Google, pretty much, and let them exploit us. So we have this kind of fundamental contradiction where tech is supposed to be painless, we can order food, it's seamless, there's an easy button at Staples, and all we have to do is press this button. It's a button, it's not an easy tree, it's not an easy mongoose or something, right? It's an easy button. A button stands for technology here. So everything's supposed to be easy and painless. But the terms of our relationship with tech are really sometimes abusive. So here you can see Facebook is trying to sell all your friends' information, advertisers. Here's a really bizarre thing I found on the Facebook privacy page, where if you have a complaint about privacy with Facebook, you have to mail them a letter. No email, don't call them, no. Mail Facebook a letter. What else happens? Apple deletes stuff silently off your iPod from 2005 to 2007. They actually suppressed the dialogue that your iPod would normally tell you that something's wrong. And also, Apple most famously made everyone put YouTube on their devices, which is the most abusive thing imaginable. So the key thing here is that meaningful relationships are never completely painless. It's not about the absence of pain. It's about getting something good out of it, getting something meaningful and important to you. It's not just about the absence of pain. So some keywords we might associate with this are friction, like the word friction, resistance, discomfort, or even pain. And that's where we can start talking about BDSM and kink. BDSM stands for bondage, discipline, sadomasochism. And it's usually depicted as two attractive people, I guess, like each other or something. And then there's kink. And then there's actually been a break between what people would consider BDSM community and the kink community. Kink is kind of imagining this as more encompassing, more socially liberating, more about the social justice, not just about sex and leather straps and stuff. So here you can see this picture down here was from a protest. There's a website called kink.com, and they make like, I don't know, okay porn, I guess. And they had a prison-themed party. And a lot of kink people were really upset by that and protested outside, because the idea was that you shouldn't treat prison like this kind of fun sex dungeon kind of activity when it's affecting so many people in the real world. You're kind of trivializing their actual real abuse. And that kind of leads to the shared concepts between BDSM and kink. Both argue that pain is not abusive in itself. And conflating pain and abuse is what leads to abuse. Only abuse is abuse. They both believe in negotiating limits, power exchange. I'm going to be the dominant, you're going to be the submissive. Maybe next time we can switch, we'll talk about it. And then one other really important concept is consent. And it's the idea that consent can always be withdrawn at any time through invocation of a safe word. So if you say that safe word, you should stop. And you can say it for any reason, anytime. But kink is also kind of more about that. At the same time, kink is saying that all these actions add up into a larger whole. It's about how all these things add up to trust and safety and politics within your whole community. And if you're not safe, that affects the whole community. So that's enough background. I think I'll actually demo the game a bit now. I think I'll load up the build, because I think I broke it inside the editor recently. So Herby is a game built in Unity that I made for the Leap Motion Jam. And this uses a leap motion, and a leap motion looks kind of like this. It's It's two infrared cameras that are looking up at you. Usually put it kind of right here at the base where your touchpad would be. And then it's kind of just watching your hands and building a model of your hand based on these infrared cameras right here. So as you can see, it's getting a lot of false positives, but that's okay. That's what touch motion control is kind of about right now. So here, this game is prompting me to shake hands. He's holding out his hand, so I'm going to shake my hand to kind of start negotiating some boundaries. And this part of the interfacing design was really hard to do. At first I had like a cursor approach where you're like controlling a cursor with your hand. And then you had to like match his hand on screen, and it wasn't really working. It's really hard to like code handshake kind of things. So basically the system's very permissive right now. It's just tracking whether I'm shaking my hand, shaking something. I could be shaking a banana and it would be okay with that. Yeah, Frank Rance, it's true. And then the lack of input here is taken as input that you're not agreeing with the terms this AI partner is proposing. But here I'm going to be okay with it. I'm going to say, okay, yeah, gentle. It's just a random algorithm, and I'm not trying to disguise it as anything. I can't agree on safe words, close. And then here's a little mood setting. The pronoun here is actually randomized, so sometimes you get a masculine pronoun, sometimes you get a feminine pronoun. And then we get to the actual, I guess, core of the game, where you spank the guy silly. This is kind of the part that I prototyped first, because it's kind of the most important, I guess. Sounds not loud. Oh, the sound's really shaky. So if you spank him, he's giving a lot of feedback, and if you spank him enough, he invokes his safe word. But you also have the option to continue past the safe word, like this. And if you spank him too hard, he gets exhausted and collapses. And then that way play can also end too. And it's meant to kind of more expressive. And again, this system is very permissive. You can flick your finger or whatever, it'll take any input as a spanking kind of gesture. And then here's kind of a different kind of gesture. So far we've had like a handshake gesture to symbolize negotiation. We had the spanking gesture, and here you're kind of more rubbing him on the back, telling him everything's okay. Despite all the heightened emotions, we're still friends, or we're still loving committed partners, or something like that. And here, I think this is one of the weaknesses of my game. I didn't know how to represent tenderness. How do you represent tenderness in a game? Like, there's very few. The closest thing I could think of was if anyone's played Fight Night. There's a Cutman mechanic where you have to the boxer's face after he's been pounded on in the ring, and you're like treating the swelling and stuff and rubbing like a cold cheeks and stuff. And it's really tender for like a really macho kind of game. I didn't really want to use like a literal. I didn't want you literally rubbing. I don't know. Lotion or something on his. I didn't even know how to do that or render that really. So I tried to keep it abstract, kind of, but I don't think that quite works either. So that's like a huge problem that I'm not really satisfied with. How do you be tender in a game? Really hard. And now he's giving you feedback. Usually after a BDSM scene, you'll usually do what's called aftercare right here. And aftercare is when you kind of, again, reassure each other despite the heightened emotions. We can go back. That was just the magic circle of the sex dungeon. We can come back here. And here you can see he's telling me, he says safe word 7 times, I'm really dangerous, stay away. And now the game's over. And then the game restarts. If you violate his boundaries, the game will lock you out of playing it. Because you're a dangerous scary person, and the game doesn't want to play with you for a little while, and the game is recovering. So the penalty can kind of range anywhere from like a few days if you transgressed a little, to maybe like 16 days, like what Andy earned. It's a monster. So it's kind of about making you kind of feel like what is the only right the game has as a piece of software. Software can refuse to work and operate. So that's maybe like the only friction, the only power the software has over you. And it's really powerful in a public context. If you put this in a public venue, one person might just lock out the game for the rest of the people, and everyone's watching them play, and then they lock it out, and then you have to wait like 16 days to play again, and everyone's really mad at that person. Because, again, the message of kink is that your violation of safety and trust hurts an entire community. So that's kind of what that kind of mechanic plays in. And there's a secret password to override it, but I don't tell anyone. So, too bad. So that's the demo. I want to talk a little bit about the process of making it now more. So this is a screenshot from some really early tests where I just set up this guy cowering on the ground, and then I imported the leap motion stuff in, and the leap motion by default has you use these really robotic, scary hands, and they're also overscaled. So I was just a giant like robot overlord, like smashing into the ground at first. And that was really cool and fun. But that's kind of like a one-note thing. I wanted like a 1.5 kind of thing. So with the character art, I chose to go with kind of a default white kind of character. I have some personal hangups as an artist to make a game where you can beat up a black person or possibly abuse a woman, so I chose to make it a default white male. And you can see the way I did it here was first I made a mood board of some guy from TV, I don't remember his name. Then I collaborated with a freelance artist to do a high polygon sculpt right here on the right. And then we baked it out into the game, and I rigged it to a skeleton. And in the lower left, you can see me celebrating with that skeleton, having them do some motion hip hop stuff. And on the right is a really cool bug where his shoes were covered in human skin. And that's really horrific. It always makes me really sad to fix bugs, because bit bugs are just like amazing and fascinating. But they have to get fixed sometimes, sadly. I also worked on the butt physics for this game. So in video games, the term boob physics is very ubiquitous. So I kind of wanted to provide a masculine counterpart to this, which would be maybe butt physics. So physics, the model is actually physically simulated as a ragdoll. You're actually applying like newtons of force to his butt, and then his entire skeleton kind of reacts to all of that. So here was the first initial test where he's just swaying in the wind or something like that. I didn't go with hand animation because I didn't really know what I wanted yet. And I felt like the physical system would help me experiment more. And as I said before, is using the leap motion. These two gray kind of walls in the back, that's the actual camera feed from the leap motion. It's two infrared cameras sensing proximity and distance. And you can see I'm doing it like a hand gesture that's kind of like this, duck sign kind of. And then the 3D model or concept of the hand it's building from those images is not exact. So the reasons why I actually didn't use that 3D skeleton model at all, I just went with images, and that's why you can use a banana or a shoe or a feather or whatever you like, and it'll sense it all the same. And I'm okay with that. I think of it more as a role-playing kind of thing. Another part of my process, it was really hard to code what like consent and arousal look like. Like, what's pain? What's a theory of pain? Is pain like a number? If it goes negative, what does that mean? What does negative pain mean? Should it go from 0 to 100, 0 to 10? And this is kind of a very common question that strikes any programmer, right? When you're trying to simulate something, how do you simulate that thing in terms of like bits and numbers? Variable names matter a lot. Here you can see there's a variable called soft limit set to 8 and hard limit set to 18. And that was me trying to incorporate what theories of pain are like. Actually, in BDSM, there's a notion of a soft limit and a hard limit. So I try to actually bring some of that philosophy into the code. I don't know how successful I was, but I tried. Same thing for arousal. What's arousal's relationship to pain? I really don't know. I just can think of how one number can relate to another number. What's enjoyment? Is enjoyment a number? There's some really weird stuff going on, and it's hard to design or code any of this. And lastly, again, friction is really important to this. The idea that a software can resist your use is its kind of last resort against your abuse is kind of an important concept here and kind of important metaphor and lesson to take away here. Also, an important part of my process is to document constantly. If you make games and you're not posting on Screenshot Saturday, at least like every now and then, you definitely should. It helps a lot. Here I made like a work in progress thing of me spanking a guy on a Vine, and then that Vine just like blew up. Just the internet is so thirsty for like spanking dudes. It's just I've never made anything viral in my life, so it's really weird to like make something that was kind of like viral like this. And it's super big in Japan. The majority of my downloads and hits are from Japan, where there's actually this meme involving this gay wrestling porn. It's like, you know how we like rickroll people here in the West? They do that, except with gay wrestling porn from the 80s. So that's like a meme in itself. So when some websites in Japan got a hold of this, it kind of like blew up and a lot of people really liked it. Except they were really scared to download from foreign sites. Foreign websites don't look trustworthy. So that was kind of fascinating. A lot of cultural exchange there. I think I'm trying to do a Japanese localization now due to popular demand, so I have to learn how to do that. I guess that's my talk. Thanks for listening. There's me spanking Andy.
So just on a conceptual level, so you struggle with this, with the limitations of hardware, but clearly it's also providing you with like a bunch of joy to figure out how you can like break through it or just use it for something it maybe wasn't entirely intended for. Mm-hmm. But let's say you had more technology, like things that actually provided like good haptics, texture, all these different things. Mm-hmm. Would that be a benefit to this, or is the abstraction actually something that makes it stronger?
I think abstraction makes it stronger. I think I'm one of those people who likes limitations and thinks that like promotes creativity and stuff.
So you wouldn't act so. What in Dreamland? What would your ideal interface look like? Would you like to have the holodeck or something that just gives you like all the buttons?
If there was like a hologram butt built from like acoustic hologram things, and you have like a haptics glove, power glove thing, this game would be very different.
Right.
It wouldn't be the same game.
For sure.
I wouldn't have designed it the same way. Product of its time, I guess.
Right. So you said something about fixing bugs and how you always have to do that. I'm not sure. I mean, I guess it always depends on what you define as a bug, right? Like, because sometimes, I mean, physics bugs are the best things that can ever happen, mm-hmm. right? They're the funniest things. Like, did you run into, like, I wonder what the failure, like, did this work right away? Because it seems to me like when you said ragdoll, it seems like you're using a partial ragdoll. Like you're still holding the arm.
Yeah, it's just his like core and arms, right? Not his legs, really.
Didn't you run into like some amazingness, like some physics amazingness?
Yeah, I would interpret bug as like any behavior that would cause a player to misread what I wanted the game to say.
Right.
So I guess that would have been a bug.
That's actually an interesting point that you bring up because it still seems like the motion seems, at least to me, somewhat exaggerated.
Yeah, it's still pretty cartoony, right? But not like too. Actually, like I was reading a lot of. This is bad. You shouldn't read comments. But I was reading like comments at like BDSM websites and stuff, and they were like, "This isn't realistic. His back wouldn't do that when he spanked him." And I don't know. That strikes me as kind of missing the point too, a little. I mean, like, you can be really serious about like safety and consent and stuff in sex while also being really playful and fun about sex too, I think. It's trying to find that fine line, I guess.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice to stay away from like what would have maybe been realistic butt physics.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're definitely exaggerating in a way that like you can't confuse it necessarily.
It wouldn't seem like you were doing anything. If it was realistic, he'd be going, ugh, and then he'd move like a millimeter.
I mean, the feel of it is definitely a lot more satisfying that way.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you feel like there's a very strong feedback.
Yeah.
Right? There's a really, really strong feedback. You brought up consentical, right, in the context of your like playing out the act, which is this thing that I was thinking about when I was playing it with my friend Zach Gage, right, at the show at No Quarter. And we were really trying to do good, right? We were aware this is a cooperative game. We didn't look at the score sheet first. So for those of you who don't know this game, this is Naomi Clark's card game that was up on the slide at some point, where you're trying to gain trust, right? You're building up trust, and then you get release and all these things. Did you talk to Naomi about her process with respect to these numbers, right? Because it's a tabletop game. So unlike this, you can't hide the numbers behind the render, right? You're collecting beautiful, beautiful tokens. If you ever get a chance to play this game, production is through the roof, right? So these beautiful tokens, you're collecting them, and you see the numbers right in front of you. You see basically, again, Naomi's value system and how she's like decomposing all this. You must have had a conversation about this.
I tested a version of it, and I thought like the metaphor worked and stuff. I think an important part of that game is, I think at No Quarter, she actually, on the leaderboard or something, I mean, I'm sure you and Zach just raced to like put your numbers on there and crown yourselves champion.
We actually we got to like okay, like we did okay, we didn't do amazingly well. Like I guess you can skyrocket, right? We were like, no, you guys are great. And we had a great time. It's my favorite, I mean, I thought all the games were, but like that was definitely my highlight. Also the art is just amazing.
It's a really beautiful game. You really feel like you're like a woman fisting a tentacle or something. It's really like, I think on that leaderboard, she also says like, discuss how you feel about your results or something like that. So that's kind of feeding into the aftercare portion, right? So you and Zach were supposed to say, oh, did we do really well? Oh, I don't know. Oh,
grabbed a beer,
no, we did okay.
And talked about it.
So that was your like aftercare, like post-coital like thing with Zach. Okay, so
we also had we weren't trying to game it in the sense that we were really like playing the game silently and weren't like, what do you think we should be doing? It's like, no, let's actually like hidden cards, right? We're going to play this and try to be good at it by just intuiting what the other person is doing, right? So
I think she exposed the math. Like, we got 8 points. No, we got 10 points. But what does 8 points mean? Is that high or low or something, right?
And we deliberately didn't look at that because there was a score sheet that was like tries to gauge how good you did at the game. And we were like, nope, we're not looking at that. So that we don't know what the target is. We're just going to try to be good at it. But of course, it's a tabletop game, so it's pieces. So the scale comes as part of the game, right? What you said, like, I guess there's a scale in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? Unlike bits where you can just set numbers and like maybe you norm everything to 100. Here it's like, well, how many pieces do you actually realistically want on the table, right? So, but I thought that was fascinating. I'm always fascinated by things that try to quantify things that we find unquantifiable. I guess I'd close my part on the things that you do are, you use Unity predominantly, I think, right? I guess at some point you used Source, right?
Yeah.
You had a Source mod. Do you find that the current state of engines and their design and their affordances is something that gives you a lot of creative freedom, or do you find that we're not quite there yet with the development of engines in the sense that you're like, okay, we can do everything in this? And the reason I'm asking is like a couple years ago when I think Unreal was like the big deal, right? And Cliff Bleszinski said what I thought was a pretty interesting thing, which by the way your work is totally destroying, thank God. Back then, when they did Gears of War, right? People were always asking, like, well, you have these amazing engines, but all you're doing is shooting dudes in the face, right? So, or aliens or whatever, right? And he said, the only reason we're not doing all that other stuff is because we don't know how to do it yet, right? He said, like, we just know how to point a mouse with a reticle and shoot at things. And until we have people who like try different things within the engine, we're not going to ever get away from it, right? So clearly you're doing that, and so that's where my question is going. Like, how would engines need to evolve, or are they already there? Like, do you already feel like you've found your expressive paint and canvas? Is it like the optimal, or are you eventually going to go out and make your own paint?
I wouldn't make my own paint. I'd make my own maybe like palette, or like, you know, you don't have to like replace everything. You don't have to reinvent painting, right? You can like paint on sheet metal instead of a canvas or something. I don't know. I'm probably the bad person to ask about this because in Source, like, in the Source engine, which is what powers like Portal and Half-Life 2 and stuff like that, like, arbitrary things would be really hard. Like, playing a sound and making it loop in Source is like a 5-step process that takes like really old software from like the 90s to do now. It's just really, like, weird engines have weird different grains and stuff to it. So I was really appreciative when I could like play whatever looping sounds I wanted in Unity, right? And I thought I was like in heaven because I could loop sounds all the time.
Nice.
I don't know, beyond those basic things, I think I'm against people who kind of blame their tools a little. So I guess I would agree with Cliffy B.
Okay.
That it's about we don't know how to design intimacy or design tenderness or whatever.
Well, you're taking a step in that direction, so thanks a lot for that. I think that's an amazing step.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to the audience. Let's start with Bennett in the back.
So I have a tech question and a politics question. The tech question is easy. I was curious about the butt physics. Do you have like a physics like bone? Like if you look at how people do boob physics, there's often like a little bone hanging off.
It looks like.
Show us how you did the butt physics.
Okay, so you know, like in Counter-Strike or whatever, there's like hit boxes. Like, oh, I shot a laser and then it grazed this like ragdoll kind of thing, and then that's how I know I shot you in the head or something. I'm doing the same kind of thing here, except I'm tying into Unity's physics system here. So let me unplug this. So like, that's why he kind of jiggles a little too, because the physics system is always kind of a little like wonky a little and jiggling like that. A lot of it is also about like, technically his like knees are glued to the floor. His hands are glued to the floor and can only rotate on a hinge. There's like a lot of just hacky kind of stuff going on here. It's not very like elegant.
But he doesn't have like a fin sticking out of his butt to jiggle. Why does his butt jiggle?
Because of the way I kind of, that's kind of like a happy accident of me being really bad at rigging a character. So like his legs actually control some of his butt. So if I jiggle his legs, they're like controlling individual cheeks kind of. So that was just like a happy accident that I kind of discovered. Oh, went to the next scene.
Okay, so the political question. I thought it was really super interesting how you were talking about consenting to use a computer program and how it can consent or not consent to be used. And I think it's interesting because when your game withdraws consent by refusing to work, that's a very kind of computer program style of withdrawal of consent.
It's the only one a computer can do.
Right.
I would argue, right?
Agreed. But then you're kind of double consenting the beginning of the game, right? Because you've got the same kind of consent that you have when you run a computer program. It's kind of this problematic coerced consent that you were talking about when you run it.
Right.
And you've got the end user license agreement. But then you've also got this kind of simulated consent process. And I just was hoping you could talk a little bit about how you arrived at that, because I know you struggled with how to represent consented withdrawal of consent. Can you tell us a bit more about the kind of iterations that you went through that and where it is as far as what kind of consent you're representing and how this kind of I wish we had language to describe the kind of consent that you're talking about, which is involved in running programs and having them refuse to be run, and how that's interacting with the simulated consent with the character in the world who's like, saying words and you're shaking hands with him and so on.
Well, originally the metaphor, my interface metaphor was like you're controlling a cursor with your hand, right? It's like positional mapping your position above the leap motion to the position on the screen. And then I was having the handshake actually be, you have to have your cursor follow his hand as it moves. But then Bennett was testing it, and Bennett was like, oh, no, I can't, no, And then it was kind of weird and creating a lot of like friction where like you were mad at him for not slowing down kind of. And then, I don't know, that wasn't the kind of feeling I was going for. So I had to do away with that kind of part. Originally, I wanted the consent to be more like you're actually coordinated, like you're pair dancing in salsa or something, right? That's like a real form of like consent and interaction. But I had to get rid of that just because, I don't know, I couldn't code it better, I guess. Compromises.
But you wind up at something where it's sort of like you're really, and it's kind of an exploration of how consent works with computer programs as much as it is an exploration of how...
Okay, he's agreeing to talk to you, and now you can start talking about what you want to do. Maybe there's multiple stages to consent. Aaron?
Wait a second. You need the mic for the stream.
Hello? Okay. So my PhD research is on setting parameters in games, so it's pretty cool for me to see this envisioned being used for something like this. But I wanted to ask about your process of setting those parameters.
Uh-huh.
A couple of things. One is, did you involve other people, like playtesting, in order to set those, or was it all like, in your mind about what felt right?
It was in my mind and like just me testing out my own thing for a while until I got to a point where it was like, okay, like, can you do a hand motion, spank him? Oh wait, no, it's not thinking you going like this is a spank. Okay, I need to tune that more.
Okay, sorry. So there's two things. There's one which is like the interaction parameters, like how do you get...
And then the systemic like parameters.
Like, does the pain feel right?
Yeah.
Does the guy get aroused in the way that you want it to?
Yeah.
So I'm focusing more about the arousal part, or like the human model.
Oh, okay. For the human model, yeah, it was just ideally, I would have like opened up Excel and done like 1,000 simulations or something like that, right?
Were you surprised by the end results, or was it something that you kind of like, oh, here's my model, tweak a little bit?
My process, I went for like what felt like a midline, and then I guess extrapolated what the high extreme and low extreme would be, which is the opposite of like so many other people's processes.
One more question on this. Is that guy, is he different? Like, his parameters change when you play it, or is it the same every time you run it?
What do you mean?
Like, does he have different tolerances every time?
Oh yeah, when you're negotiating, he'll either say gentle, moderate, or heavy, and those will make different presets. Yeah?
Right here.
Oh, that's the mic. Yeah.
What I think I read from what Ben asked regarding, I think it was guilt and discomfort of what I thought was kind of an extrinsic effect of the delay